Imagine waking up one morning and discovering that your bank account is empty. Not because someone stole your wallet, not because you clicked a suspicious link, but because a hacker on the other side of the world quietly entered your computer months ago. He watched, he waited, and when the moment was right, he took everything. Over the last 30 years, cybercrime has evolved from harmless pranks into a multi-billion-dollar criminal industry. Some hackers stole information, others stole money, and a few became so dangerous that governments placed them on international wanted lists. These are the stories of the cybercriminals who forced the FBI to create an entirely new battlefield. A battlefield that exists inside computers. Before cybercrime became a global threat, it was little more than curiosity. In the 1970s, the internet barely existed. Most people had never touched a computer. Yet a small group of enthusiasts discovered that the world's telephone systems could be manipulated. By reproducing specific audio tones, they could access parts of the network that were never intended for the public. These pioneers became known as phone phreaks. At first, many of them weren't interested in money. They simply wanted to understand how complex systems worked. They were explorers, experimenters, problem solvers. But technology was changing quickly. As more people connected to digital networks, opportunity appeared. Curiosity became power. Power became profit. And profit eventually became crime. By the late 1980s, hackers were no longer just curious teenagers experimenting with technology. Some had begun targeting corporations, universities, and government systems. One name soon became known across the United States: Kevin Mitnick. Unlike modern cybercriminals, Mitnick's greatest weapon wasn't malware. It wasn't a virus. It wasn't sophisticated software. It was psychology. He mastered a technique known as social engineering. Instead of attacking computers directly, he attacked people. He convinced employees to reveal passwords. He impersonated technicians. He exploited trust. Again and again the strategy worked. As his reputation grew, so did the attention of law enforcement. Authorities launched a nationwide search. For years, Mitnick managed to stay ahead of investigators. But eventually, the chase came to an end. In 1995, the FBI arrested him. His case became one of the most famous cybercrime investigations in history. Yet while the public focused on one hacker, a much larger threat was quietly emerging: organized cybercrime. By the early 2000s, the internet had become essential to everyday life. People stored money online. Businesses relied on digital systems. Governments connected critical infrastructure to networks. Criminals quickly realized something important. They no longer needed to rob a single bank. They could target thousands of victims simultaneously. Malware became more sophisticated. Botnets appeared. Entire underground marketplaces emerged. Stolen passwords, credit card information, personal data. Everything had a price. Cybercrime was no longer a hobby. It was no longer the work of isolated individuals. It had become a global industry worth billions of dollars. And one man would soon become one of the most wanted cybercriminals on Earth. His name was Evgeny Bogachev. For investigators around the world, Evgeny Bogachev represented something new. He wasn't a teenager hacking for fun. He wasn't trying to gain attention, and he wasn't interested in proving how smart he was. According to investigators, he was building a cybercrime empire. The operation revolved around a piece of malware known as Zeus. At first glance, Zeus appeared invisible. Victims rarely noticed anything unusual. Their computers continued to function normally. Emails still arrived. Websites still loaded. Online banking appeared completely secure. But behind the scenes, something very different was happening. The malware silently recorded usernames, passwords, banking credentials, and other sensitive information. Every keystroke could become valuable. Every login could become a target. As the operation evolved, investigators believe a more advanced version emerged. It became known as GameOver Zeus. Unlike traditional malware, GameOver Zeus was designed to be incredibly difficult to shut down. There was no single server controlling the network. No single switch investigators could flip. Instead, infected computers communicated with one another. Each infected machine became part of a massive digital army, a botnet, and the botnet continued to grow. Thousands of infected devices became hundreds of thousands. Hundreds of thousands became more than 1 million. The scale shocked investigators. Victims were spread across dozens of countries. Banks were losing money. Businesses were losing money. Ordinary people were losing money. And many never understood how it happened. For years, the operation generated enormous profits. Authorities estimated that losses linked to the malware reached well over $100 million. Some estimates suggested the true damage could be significantly higher. The FBI, international law enforcement agencies, cybersecurity firms, and intelligence specialists all began focusing on the same target. Stopping the network became a priority, but finding the people behind it proved far more difficult. Cybercriminals don't need to stand inside a bank. They don't need to enter a building. They don't need to cross a border. Everything can be done remotely, thousands of miles away, hidden behind layers of infrastructure, protected by anonymity. For investigators, it was like hunting a ghost. Yet despite the challenges, authorities slowly began piecing together the operation. Servers were identified, connections were mapped, infrastructure was analyzed, the walls were beginning to close in. Then, in 2014, one of the largest international cybercrime operations in history was launched. Its goal was simple: take down GameOver Zeus. More than a decade after the takedown operation against GameOver Zeus, the case remains one of the most significant cybercrime investigations in history. It demonstrated both the strengths and the limitations of modern law enforcement. Authorities proved they could disrupt massive criminal networks. They proved they could coordinate across continents. They proved they could dismantle infrastructure used by cybercriminals. But they also learned a difficult lesson. Taking down a network is often easier than capturing the people behind it. In the digital age, criminals can operate from thousands of miles away. They can hide behind layers of technology. They can disappear into jurisdictions beyond the reach of investigators. And sometimes, despite years of effort, arrests never come. The story of GameOver Zeus changed the way governments think about cybercrime. It changed the way investigators work, and it changed the way the world understands digital threats. What began as a few infected computers eventually became a global investigation involving governments, intelligence agencies, and cybersecurity experts. Yet perhaps the most important lesson is this: cybercrime is no longer a problem of the future. It is a problem of the present. Every day, billions of people trust digital systems with their money, their information, and their lives. And every day, someone is trying to exploit that trust. The tools may change, the technology may evolve, but the battle remains the same. As long as computers exist, someone will try to break them. And somewhere in the world, the next investigation has already begun.